What's up guys, it's Tom with Verus Engineering, and today we're going to be going over the front splitter for the GR-GV STI and how to install it. So on a quick note, this kit is designed to work with the STI branded lip as well as our air dam. So with that in mind, we're going to jump right into the installation and go from here. Okay, first things first, make sure you jack the car up and secure it properly. Next thing you want to do after that is remove the engine under panel. It's held up by 3 bolts, one here, 2 that are forward on the radiator support, 2 retainers back here, and 2 clips in the wheel wells going in from the sides. There will be a picture up here that'll show you the exact location of each of those. Okay, so as part of the kit, you're going to be provided with 4 brackets, outer brackets, inner brackets, as well as the correct amount of bolts, which are button head cap screws, 16 millimeters long M6 by 1.0, and 18 millimeter washers. We're going to go ahead and install these, and I'll show you the correct orientation. In order to get the engine under panel back on the car, we will need to clearance it in order to fit this piece around the brackets we installed previously. And in order to do that, we're going to cut it like I have shown here. And basically, this being the center of the under panel, we're going to measure from this flat portion towards the outside, which should measure roughly 4 inches. We're going to measure from this flat, which is towards the outside of the center panel, towards the center, at about 4.5 inches. And from that line, we're going to take the leading edge of the under panel, measure towards the rear. That'll give us roughly 6.5 inches. On the other side, we'll measure towards the rear again. That'll give us roughly 7 inches. That should give you an outline, something like this. If you want, you can radius the corners if you like. Basically, this slot here needs to be about 2 inches wide, and this will get you to get the under panel back on with no issues, plenty of room on each side that'll fit around the brackets you installed. All right, to get the under panel back on the car, we're going to install just one of the M8 bolts with the 12 millimeter head in the rear. We're going to install the 2 clips on each side, one going this way, one going this way. And then we're going to install the retainers in the back. We're not going to install the front 2 bolts. Those are going to be used as part of the mounting mechanism for the splitter itself. All right, so with the STI lip on the car currently, it's not on this car, but if the STI lip is installed on your car currently, we'll need to remove that. There will be a bunch of M5 bolts holding it up to the front edge of the bumper. There will be 6 3/8 clips, the bigger ones. There will be about 6 of them starting here from the center out, bang, bang, bang. And there will be 2 clips holding it from the rear inside of the wheel well back here. That will be the Phillips head clip that you'll have to unscrew and pull out. After you do that, the lip should come straight down. And if, again, you had the lip installed in your car, there will be rubber, essentially rivet nuts, but they will be rubber. You'll want to remove them out of the bumper on all of the holes. And we're going to reuse those holes to put these metal rivet nuts inside so that we can bolt the splitter up. What you want to do with the holes that we opened up to 3/8 of an inch, we're going to insert the rivet nut until the flange hits. Make sure that flange during this entire process stays flush against the bumper. Hold this portion of the hex with the 9/16 wrench that we put in the tool list, and you're going to use a 5 millimeter Allen key or socket. I prefer sockets because this will require a little bit of muscle to get behind. You're going to hold this back and you're going to start tightening this slowly. Don't use an impact, don't use a drill, use a hand tool until this portion basically crushes, and then you start to feel significant resistance. And we'll show you a picture of what the backside will look like, and you should be able to see what the backside looks like once they're fully installed. So what we're gonna do is install the bolts onto the splitter so that we don't have any trouble fumbling around with the spacers and the bolts while we're trying to get it up in the air. And the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna put the bolts through the splitter element with the corresponding spacer in the right hole. There will be a diagram after this showing exactly what combination of bolt and spacer go in which hole. But basically, on the bottom side, we'll have the bolt going through with the fender washer. And on the top side, the car side, we'll have your spacer and this push nut here. And that's gonna retain the spacer so that it doesn't fall out while you're trying to install everything. You wanna push the push nut down until almost it's making just, I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch of space between the spacer and the push nut. This will give you a little bit of wiggle room in case you're not totally lined up on the hole when you're trying to put it up in the air. So with all of these installed, we can go ahead and put the splitter up on the car. Once the rivet nuts are installed into the bumper, we're going to place or install the Sti lip onto the bumper again using the black plastic clips that we took off earlier. You only use the ones that go underneath the bumper, not from the wheel well. Once the lip is installed back to the bumper, we can go ahead and install the splitter back onto the car, and that'll be the end of the installation. If you don't have the Sti lip installed, we're going to temporarily install the splitter real quick and use the splitter as a guide to mark the holes so that we could drill them out and install the rivet nuts that I have here and continue on. Again, if you don't have the Sti lip installed on your car, we're going to temporarily install the splitter using the mounting bolts. I have the forward bolts already drilled with the rivet nuts installed, and that's what's holding this up. You're going to use the holes on the bumper, or I'm sorry, the splitter, as a guide in order to drill the holes into the bumper. So you want to start with a 1/4 inch drill bit. That way you don't have too much slop within the hole. And you're going to use this as a guide while it's centered inside of the slot into the hole, and you're going to drill up into the bumper. And if you look, I have the rivet nut installed in the bumper. You'll see that they line up, and this will kind of help you visualize what we're trying to achieve here. Once you have the hole drilled out on all of the forward mounting points to a 1/4 inch, we're going to remove the splitter, and we're going to step those holes out to 3/8 of an inch, and then we're going to prepare and install the rivet nuts. What you want to do with the holes that we opened up to 3/8 of an inch, we're going to insert the rivet nut until the flange hits. Make sure that flange during this entire process stays flush against the bumper. Hold this portion of the hex with the 9/16 wrench that we put in the tool list, and you're going to use a 5mm Allen key or socket. I prefer sockets because this will require a little bit of muscle to get behind. You're going to hold this back and you're going to start tightening this slowly. Don't use an impact, don't use a drill, use a hand tool until this portion basically crushes, and then you start to feel significant resistance. And we'll show you a picture of what the backside will look like, and you should be able to see what the backside looks like once they're fully installed. So what we're going to do is install the bolts onto the splitter so that we don't have any trouble fumbling around with the spacers and the bolts while we're trying to get it up in the air. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to put the bolts through the splitter element with the corresponding spacer in the right hole. There will be a diagram after this showing exactly what combination of bolt and spacer go in which hole. But basically, on the bottom side, we'll have the bolt going through with the fender washer. And on the top side, the car side, we'll have your spacer and this push nut here. And that's going to retain the spacer so that it doesn't fall out while you're trying to install everything. You want to push the push nut down until almost it's making just, I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch of space between the spacer and the push nut. This will give you a little bit of wiggle room in case you're not totally lined up on the hole when you're trying to put it up in the air. So with all of these installed, we can go ahead and put the splitter up on the car. So with the splitter fully bolted up onto the car, the next step we're gonna do is form our front air dam. They'll show up like this in a flat stock style. Basically what we're gonna end up doing is bend this by hand. It's thin aluminum, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal. All you're really gonna do, what I like to do is use my knee, kind of, can't really see it in the picture, but use my knee as a brace, use my thumbs here, and just kind of form this to shape. So we're just gonna hold it up against the bumper, which we've already marked the center point on the splitter, so we know where to start this on the car, and we're gonna slowly start shaping this around. Make small adjustments, don't make big adjustments. You can't really bend it back. It won't look very good. So we'll get started doing that. All right, so we just finished up forming our air dam to the shape of the bumper. The next step we're gonna do is put a piece of tape on the lower edge of the air dam. What we wanna do here is actually mark out the center of each mounting tab for all of them. And what that's gonna do is allow us to transfer those marks onto the splitter, as well as trace out the air dam onto the splitter. Once we've laid a little bit of, I guess I should have mentioned, we should put a little bit of painter's tape on the splitter itself. That way we don't obviously draw on the splitter. But basically, once we get the center point on our mounting tabs, we're going to transfer those marks onto the splitter, and then we're going to trace the outline of the air dam onto this painter's tape. That'll allow us to know where this is going to approximately go once we remove it. And when we remove it, we're going to go ahead and drill the holes to 1/4 inch so that we can begin bolting this up, and then we'll have to put it back up. As you can see on this side, I haven't transferred the center point for the marks, but I have traced out the bumper, or the outline of it, using the air dam as a guide. I chose to use a ballpoint pen here. My Sharpies currently don't have a very fine point right now, and I want to make sure that this mark is pretty precise, as this is going to set the depth for the air dam on the car. Here you can actually see the marks for the center points on the mounting tabs. Here's the center point for the splitter, matches up with the bumper. There you go. So what I did here is take a ruler and measure perpendicular, or 90 degrees, from the line that we traced earlier on the mark we transferred from the air dam, about 1/2 inch inwards. That's going to be our distance here, okay, to the center point of this hole. And again, those are the marks I'm talking about that we transferred earlier onto the splitter. So I've done it over here as well. I haven't done the entire splitter yet, but just so that you can see, that's dust, just so that you can see how I've done this. Now you'll see we've got the holes drilled, we have the bolts started but not tightened. Before you drill the holes, again, as a reminder, make sure that all of the marks that you made line up and nothing is misaligned. Kind of only get one shot to drill. Make sure you measure twice, cut once, that whole thing. But as you can see, we have the air dam pretty much fully installed. Bolts just loose right now. You want the serrated nuts to be basically bottomed out, making contact with the tab, but you don't want them to be tight. You want to be able to still move this air dam around and be able to maneuver it while you put the splitter and match it up to the bumper. That's going to give you a lot of wiggle room there. So we're going to go ahead and put this back on the car, and I'll show you how to do the final torque. And here you have it. We have the air dam fully installed. Again, when you're going to install or fully tighten the bolts for the air dam itself, make sure that the air dam is fully pushed up against the bumper. You want to get a very seamless kind of look here. And if you shape this correctly, you shouldn't have any gaps between the air dam and the bumper itself. The bolts holding the air dam to the splitter, about 6 foot-pounds max. You really don't want to crank on them. They're not there to hold anything structural. It's just to hold the air dam on. So yeah, overall, pretty moderate to difficult install, but I think the net result is a really nice, clean looking splitter with a nice looking air dam, to be honest. But I think I've been talking long enough, so why don't we get to some cool glamour shots.